Hi there, this is the Common Magician. I wanted to show you something that I came across recently, but you want to make sure that the cards are very, very clearly mixed up. And then what we're going to do is an experiment that you've probably seen before. This is a very good one. And again, it just needs to be very, very mixed up so that there's no order to it at all. We're going to get some random selections from the deck. Got a few cards flipped over in there. That's okay. But we don't want to get a few random selections from the deck here to come up with something that nobody could possibly have predicted. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just give it a cut real quick, and the card we land on is a two of spades. And I'd ask you at this point to give me a choice, value or suit. Value or suit, and you might say value, so we'll go with the value on that card too, and the suit is going to be clubs. So two of clubs. Okay, so if you can remember that, we'll get rid of those cards. So a completely random card, and we haven't even seen the card. We just came up with this very randomized selection from a shuffled deck. And what we need is also, we're going to need a random number as well, in addition to our random card. So we'll just give it another quick mix and just see what the cards give us. And random number, we'll go with 9. We could go more and add up if we want to, but we'll just go with 9 to keep this short and simple. So we have 2 of clubs, and one person would need to think about that and remember it, and then we have a 9, so the number 9. Now, I'm going to tell you a story here very quickly that you've heard me tell before. It's about a person by the name of David Berglas, blah, 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 Berglas effect, blah, 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 any card at any number. So you already know where this is going to go, and he would work with a shuffled deck that he would not touch. So you can see the deck is very shuffled, and I'm not going to touch it. As we try this experiment, I would need someone else to deal the cards so that I can't be accused of any kind of shenanigans here from this completely mixed up deck of cards. And we have 2 randomized pieces of information. We have a card and we have a number. The card was 2 of clubs, the number was 9. And I could have someone deal this out face up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the 9th card, it would be absolutely amazing, absolutely impossible if the 9th card in this shuffled deck happened to be the 2 of clubs, and it in fact is. So what I want to talk today to you about is the concept of setting up a trick, setting up some kind of a stack routine right in front of the spectators. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat here. It's important that your spectators do not perceive that the trick has started before the occurrence of the setup. You can set up a trick in front of spectators as long as they don't know that a trick is going on. Okay, there is that bit of spectator handling that is important. Now, this is a very simple sort of example of what I'm talking about here, and I'll talk about the culling that you have to do for that particular effect. It's a variation on a version of any card at any number that I covered in that Acon tutorial that I put out a while ago. That can be set up right in front of the spectator. So it's a stack. It requires that things be stacked a certain way, and you're going to allow the cards to determine what kind of stack you do, and you can stack it through the means of shuffling so that it works out. But I want to talk about why I'm bothering to give you this tutorial. There are a lot of really, really great tricks that require some kind of setup or pre-planning. And the problem with those tricks is that they require setup and pre-planning. Otherwise, an illusion, some kind of a trick that involves pre-planning and preparation is usually the hardest hitting kind of trick, and it's that pre-planning that makes it so hard hitting. And I found this actually just this week. I'm on vacation right now, and I brought a couple decks of cards with me, including this one, and I took this one out of the box, and then I usually set my jokers facing the opposite way so I can take them out. And I noticed I had 3 cards there, and I looked and I realized I had a duplicate Ace of Hearts. Somewhere along the line I had stuck a duplicate in there, and I thought, wow, I think I could use that right now. So what I did is, right in front of people, I just walked over to a book that was sitting on a shelf, and They did not know that any trick was going to be happening. They knew I had a deck of cards, and they didn't know that I was going to do anything in particular with them. Other conversation was going on. I just slipped this ace into a book. And then I, waited a certain number of minutes after that so I could get distance from the bookshelf and I could go sit down somewhere else and maybe even participate in conversation before bringing up the concept or the idea of doing some kind of a trick. So my ace was planted, and then I was ready to rock and roll. So that was preparation that was done right in front of the spectators, and it just so happened that the trick hit really, really hard. All I did was I was able to acquire the other ace of hearts to the bottom of the deck. So I just did a very, very quick call. And again, this is all prior to the actual effect beginning. Right? This is not the beginning of the trick. I'm doing all of this during downtime, during discussion. And I think the entire preparation, giving for the time period of waiting, was probably 5 minutes, no more than that, before I was able to actually do the trick. This also brings up another thing. How many tricks should you do for people? I actually firmly believe that unless you're doing a routine with a few related tricks that kind of go together, like an ambitious card routine or something like that, I kind of think you should do one trick, really, in an offhand common magician kind of performance. You're not doing a show, you're just showing a trick to people in a friendly environment. I think one trick is good. You do one that's good and let it go at that. Maybe two. Maybe two. If you can follow up with a related sort of effect, then maybe you do another one. And this works out pretty well for setup tricks, because if you're only going to do one trick, again, if the idea is that you're going to be known for doing these things, you only want to do one at a time, one or two at a time. Because if you show all of your greatest hits, then you're going to be showing all of your greatest hits every time, and people are going to see the same thing. So one trick, and that plays in very well to setup tricks, because if you're only showing one, then you only have to be set up for one, and that can be it. But I had my setup in a few minutes, doing just some fairly, mundane sorts of procedures, just shuffling, seeming to. I acquired what I needed, and the trick went like this. It was very simple. I did a crisscross force on my mother-in-law, and who's very, very critical and skeptical. She's the kind of person, when I do these tricks, she stares at the deck. She just stares at it. She won't even, she half listen to you, but she keeps her eyes on the deck. So I already knew that about her, and I took a little bit of a risk in this kind of a force. I probably should have done another force, but it played out just fine. I had her cut the deck, and then I did the typical, I'm going to hold the break that you created, blah, blah, blah. And I tried to get her to look away, and I couldn't. She stared at that thing the entire time. So I just tried to recap what had happened here for about a minute so that she would lose track of the locations, and it did work out. So I can tell you that this is a great force, even when someone's burning the deck and they're paying close attention, that you can psychologically convince people that what they're looking at is on the up and up. So I said, now you cut to this location, I want you to remember that card. So I presented it as a way, in such a way that I did not know the identity. I turned it face up for her to look at it, and then I placed it back in there. Now, of course, I know what the card is. So what I then did is I said, now you know what it is, and you know that it's somewhere in the middle where you cut to, reinforcing the fact that she cut the cards. And I said, I want you to see if you can notice it. Tell me if you see the card. And don't tell me when, just tell me if you've seen it go by. And at that point I did a call where I got it to the top and got it out of the way. And I said, great, now I'm going to turn the deck around, and I want you to tell me if you can see it again. So I went through, very openly, through the middle, and before I even got to the end, she said, I don't see it in there. And I said, well, that's interesting. It's not in there anymore. It's gone. So you can see how easy it is to convince somebody that a card has left the deck when it just isn't in the place it's supposed to be. I didn't have to do anything special or hold it out or palm it off. I just took it out of the location where it was supposed to be, and I was very transparent and open in showing the cards, and I never had to get all the way down to the end because it's not supposed to be down there. Okay, so she was convinced of a couple things at that moment: that she had selected a card freely, that I didn't know the identity, and that it had disappeared. So that's already very, very powerful in her mind. She wasn't expecting that kind of a thing to occur. And then I was able to say that's because it jumped from here all the way over there to that book. And then I had someone go grab the book, and then I had them give the book to her. I said, why don't you open that front cover? She opened the front cover, and pop, there's her Ace of Hearts. And it just completely floored her. She was amazed. She thought about it for a couple days and couldn't quite figure it out. So that's an example of a setup done right in front of people. And it drives home the first point, which is that you need to give time. You need to prepare in setting up in front of people to have a little bit of time to do it, so that you can differentiate yourself from your movement in the room and your motions to get the set. We'll talk a little bit further here about some other ways in which you can set up a trick right in front of people. So in addition to the concept of having some time and giving yourself some space to do it, I think it's important to have a plan. From the moment that I opened up that box and I saw this heart, I was devising a plan, and I didn't start to go into action until I had already sorted out exactly every move that I was going to do. I knew before I put the card in the book, again, this was impromptu, I just kind of came up with this on the spot there, but it took about 10 minutes from when I started thinking about it to when I did it. I had a plan. I was going to do these conventions that I know that I can do well. I was going to force the card in this way. I was going to show the card such that I didn't know it. I was going to call the card to demonstrate that it disappeared. I was going to have a reason for that, turn the deck around, okay? And then I was going to point to my plant. So I knew that I had these conventions all worked out. I had a plant made, so I was going to force it, I knew how. I was going to show it, I knew how. I was going to remove it, I knew how. And then I was going to reveal it, and I knew how. And I had that already worked out so that I could follow my pattern, my script, play for play. So have a plan, and know what you're going to do. You might even know that you have your plan way before you arrive at an event. If you're going to a friend's house or a party or some location that's not your home, in your own environment, you may already know what you're going to do, and it's just a simple matter of getting to that place and looking around the room and taking a few moments to design how you're going to play it out, and then getting your set ready. And you can set up hours in advance if you want to. You could arrive and set up, and then an hour and a half into your event, into your gathering, you can lay it on them. So anyway, my mother-in-law shot back very quickly with, well, could you do that again right away? And I gave her that old snarky response that, the first time's a performance, the second time is a lesson, right? And I essentially lied to her. Not really lied, because we'll get to that in a minute. But I essentially lied to her, and I said, of course I could do this. I could do this again and again and again. I could do it all day long. The truth of the matter is there's no way I could have done exactly what I did, because I had only one duplicate. So now, to kind of pull us back from the lie here very quickly, of course I could do it again, but I'd have to do it in a different means, in a different way. So that gets me to the follow-up to that, was how did I show this again 2 nights later with my mother-in-law in the same room to some other people? I only had one duplicate with me on vacation. So I just did the trick differently. I did the same effect, but I played it off differently. And what I did is I used my mother-in-law's advanced understanding of what I was about to do against her. So rather than do the trick for another person in the room, I used my mother-in-law again. I used the same person. And I said, I showed this to you the other day, and you had some questions about it. And I said, I just want to clear up some of this. I had you select a card. You cut the deck, and you were a little bit suspicious about that. So I want you to just think of a card, right? This completely threw her off, that she was able to think of any card that she wanted. So she thought of a card, and she named it out. And true to form, she said Queen of Hearts, whatever. I was actually surprised at that, but she said Queen of Hearts, and I said, you can pick any other one you want, because at the end of this, I promise you, you're going to be asking yourself, what if I had picked something else? And she said, nope, I'm sticking with the Queen of Hearts. I said, that's wonderful, that's fine. So what I did is I went through and I took out the Queen of Hearts, and I found it very quickly, and I jogged it out, and I said, so this is the one you're thinking of. It's very important that you understand that there's only one in the deck. And I said, I want you to look, because that was another question you had, was you know, could I do this again right away? Did I have to wait between, you know, or could I do it exactly the same every single time? And you can see here that there is in fact only one Queen of Hearts. That's the one that you thought of. Now this is an ambitious card routine move that I do, in which I cull out a stand-in. So what I did is, in front of the spectator, I started creating a stack using a spread call. That is one way to stack in front of people in such a way that they don't know that it's happening. Again, it's better if it's done in the context where it's done prior to the start of the trick. This is done in the context of the trick itself. And what I did is I actually called on top of my Queen of Hearts a King of Hearts. This is going to be my stand-in. Normally jacks would be better, but I saw the king and I went for it rather than try to be too picky. So what I did is I turned the deck over then, and then I did my ambitious card routine move. I said I'm going to place it right here down into the deck. I said, in fact, it's easier to see if we only have a few cards. I took the top half. This is just an ambitious card phase. That's all it is. But I'm posing it as something else. I said, let me take some of these off and I'll put them over here. And I set them on the other side across her on the table, so it's far away from me, out of sight and out of mind. And I said, I'm going to place it right into the middle. You can see there it is as it goes in. And what I did is I did my substitution cover. I covered up the pip, and I just showed the top of it. You can see the heart there. You can see some ornate design, but you don't really know exactly what kind of court card it is. You assume it's the queen. So I flash it very quickly, and then I push it in. Now, in her mind, she just saw it go into the deck. Okay? Again, just an ambitious card routine move. It's usually what I end with when I do ambitious card routine. And then I said, I want you to see if you can see it in the middle of the deck. Now my plan that I had designed was that I was going to bluff. I was going to show the cards, and I was just going to say, yep, there it went. Okay, and I was going to pretend as if I saw it. Right? I was going to assert in her mind that it was there. That was my plan. This is what happened. I went through the deck, and she said, I kid you not, she said, there it was. And I thought, this is priceless. I just can't go wrong here. I said, great, you saw it? That's wonderful. And it's not in there, okay? I was going to bluff, and then she ended up, in her anxiety over the situation, decided on her own that she saw it. So then I turned it around, and I said, now watch very closely. And I didn't want her to make the same mistake again. So I showed very openly. I said, we're looking for Queen of Hearts. And I said it out loud so she knows she's looking for the right thing. I said, no, there's a King of Hearts, but we're looking for Queen of Hearts. I see a Queen of Diamonds, but not a Queen. I don't think it's in there. Now, she made the magic on her own, and I just took advantage of it. Okay? She now thought she saw it, and then in one motion she thought that it was gone. This is even cleaner than the first time I showed it, because I could let her look at that packet if I wanted to. And I said, now you're expecting it to show up in the book that you're holding. I had her holding onto the book. I said, but actually it's in a place even further away from me. If you look over there on the table, there's a deck of cards, or part of the deck that I'd set aside a while ago. And you saw the card here, and then you saw that it was gone. And I've been on this side of you, and I haven't gone near that packet. But if you look on the top, you'll see something interesting. And sure enough, she turned it over, and there it was. And I was able to say some true things, that you thought of the card freely. You thought of it. I gave you a choice to change your mind, and you went with that one. You saw it in the pack. You saw it disappear. How in the world, could this work out? In her mind, she saw the same impossible thing, but a totally different method, and both methods were set up right in front of her, okay? That she was able to make a choice, and then I was able to stack it out in such a way that it was gone, and then reinforce in her mind that it had moved. So let's talk very quickly about ways to set up in front of people. My preferred way to set up a stack might not be yours. It's actually to use a spread call, which you know I've covered that quite a bit on this channel. If you want to see the spread call in depth kind of tutorial, look up the ambitious card routine tutorial that I put on the channel some time ago, where I cover the spread call in some detail. And you can see not only how to do it, but also a way that I came up with to practice it that is a little bit more, I think, accessible and helps you to understand the exact motions and mechanics of the call as you're doing it. For example, if I wanted to set up for my the effect that I just did, the any card at any number, I could call my stack by appearing to look at the faces. So what I would need to do is I would need to have a card, a target. I would need to have a number of cards above that. I would need to have a card indicating the number of cards above that. Then I would need to have two other cards that indicate the target. Okay, and I need to have them in that order. Now, as you're culling, you're going to be taking cards out of the deck and putting them underneath here, kind of in a separate stack. And as you call new cards on top, you're stacking from the bottom to the top. So you would be starting with the target in order to get where you want to be. And this might actually take a couple of passes. So one pass might be to take your target, we'll call it the 3 of hearts because it's an early card, take an early one. So I'm going to call that out. And then I'm going to decide on a number. I'm going to say 9. So I'm going to call 9 cards on top of that, actually 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I actually saw a 9 go by, and I know that there's going to be more 9s in there. So I'm going to keep going until I see another 9, and then I'm going to pull that one. Okay, and then I need to call on top of it the cards that will indicate this value. So a heart and a 3. Now what I need is actually first I need a heart, and then I need to get the 3 on top of that, and then I move that whole stack, that whole packet, all the way to the top of the deck, and I'm already set. So in one pass, as long as I'm not too picky about my target card and I pick an early one, you could actually stack it just in the motion of spreading the deck very quickly. And if this is done in an off moment prior to the start of the trick, in there you can even be doing this with the deck in hand, right? Sitting around a table, people watching you doing it. But not knowing that a trick is about to happen. Okay, and then I can follow up immediately now with that. Now all I need to do is I need to do some top stock retention overhand shuffles, which you probably noted when you watched the actual performance, where the trick starts at this point, right? Where I can talk about we need to get some random pieces of information, right? So in jog 1, I pull at the break, and then I shuffle off down to my packet and throw on top, and then I can convincingly say that I have a random card here. Now I give a little bit of equivoque and I say, I give you 2 options. I pick up a card, the next one I say value or suit. If they say value, I say great, we'll go with 3, that's the value. If they say suit, then we'll say okay, this is the suit to that value. Okay, and it's as if they made a decision about what this was going to be, and they really didn't. I just forced them to accept what I already had. 3 of hearts is going to be our piece of information there. And then I can put these into the middle of the deck. I find that better than putting them on bottom, because it looks like you're mixing things up when you stick them in the middle, but I'm still retaining my top stock. And then I do another shuffle very quickly, so another top stock retention and jog 1 card, shuffle off, pull at the break, and then shuffle off again and drop the packet on top, and I'm back to square 1 with that top stock. And I say we need a random number, 9, and then I have people remember these. So you're remembering your 3 of hearts, you're remembering 9, and then I go on with it. And then this is where I actually start the trick. So I've been doing some pieces of information, but this is kind of a secondary start. Everything's been set up to this point, and I can differentiate the selection of free random pieces of information from this, which is the actual trick. I give the deck another shuffle, and I start telling my story. David Bergloss, blah, 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 any card at any number, blah, 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 randomly selected pieces of information, yada, 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 shuffle deck, I'm not going to touch it. And then I'm ready to go. And now the trick is actually all set and all done. I ask for the pieces of information that they've been thinking of, and I count down to it. It's going to be 9 cards, face up, someone else can deal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 should be the 3 of hearts, and people are amazed, okay? So that is a setup done right in front of people, and it's a pretty complicated stack. There's a stack of, what, 10, 11, 12, 13 cards there. That I had to get in order to do that. So most setups are a lot easier than that. So doing even just culling out 4 of a kind, right, is a lot easier than what we just did. And if you're doing it at a moment when people are not, aware of something that's going to happen, you're all the better off. You could have set it up and then you can get to shuffling right away. It's even better actually if you're doing your setup after someone else has been handling the cards. So let's say the cards were in play and someone else has shuffled them, right? They've been playing around with them. Let's say you're with some other magicians or something like that, right? And you're just kind of playing off of each other. Someone else been playing with the cards and shuffling them. You take them, you do your call in an offbeat moment, and then you shuffle off yourself right before you start, right? And after that, when no one's really been paying attention to how you're shuffling, but just they recall the fact that you shuffle. In fact, you're finishing the shuffle when you say, this is a really good one that I know, and I just want to remind you that everyone's been using the cards here. You've been shuffling it. I just shuffled it. Everything is mixed up pretty well, and then you can go into your 4-card location or whatever the case may be and start showing Jack. So, setting up using a call in an offbeat moment is a pretty quick and efficient way to get a stack going in a variety of different ways, so that you have cards that you need in the right place at the right time. Let me show you another one. This comes out of gambling, actually, but this is another variation on culling cards, and this is the one that I demonstrated for you at the beginning. It's a lot easier than doing a spread call. Okay, so this is another type of call. This is a shuffle call. This is an overhand shuffle call, but it's a face-up shuffle. Now, the reason why this can play well is because it really looks to the unwitting spectator, someone who's not paying attention to your shuffle. Just they might be aware that you're shuffling, but they're not paying attention to it. So again, this is in the moments before the action begins. It looks like this. It just looks like an overhand shuffle, when in fact what you're doing is this. You're shuffling with the faces up. Now if you do this in combination with a body tilt, so that they're looking at this side, right? You just turn to your left or whatever hand you shuffle with. They're seeing, even if they glance over to note that you're shuffling cards, they see this back design and they see that you're doing shuffling. Nobody really thinks about the fact that you can see the faces, right, from your perspective. They can't see them, so there's nothing in their mind to consider that you can see them where you're at, that you're actually looking at this, okay? So this is a really, really good shuffle that comes out of gambling cheating, and it's actually a very risky thing to do in gambling cheating because people are paying attention to the way you shuffle. But in an offbeat moment, this is totally benign to shuffle cards in this way. Now, what I'm doing, this is even better because it allows me to set up in such a way that I don't have to remember my target card through a bunch of procedures. I can know my target card kind of right at the end when I need to pick my selection cards. So again, doing that same ACON setup, and this would work with any kind of small packet that you need to set up at the top of a deck and get a stack going. I'm going to shuffle until I see a higher value card. So I just shuffle until I see something like a 9 or a 10, maybe even an 8. If I'm really dry and I'm not seeing 9s and 10s, I'll grab the first 8 that I see. So I don't know if you caught what I did there, I'll put it back in. But I'm going to shuffle until I see a high value card, and then I'm just going to stick it at the top. So once again, I shuffle until I see a high value card, and then I put it right on top. So rather than stick them on the other side and keep shuffling all the way to the end, I just put that packet right on top, so I'm looking at it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 9, I'm going to thumb it off, and then I'm going to count 9 cards. So I'm going to go like this. 1, and then, I'm sorry, 9, then I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to note what that card is, 5 of diamonds, and then I'm going to move this to the top of the deck. Now all I need to do is I need to grab a diamond, and then I need to grab a 5. So the first 5 that I get to, and because there's 4 of them in every deck, I've never found a time when this didn't work out. Eventually I should hit a 5 somewhere in there. I bring it to the bottom, and then I bring that one to the top. Okay, so you acquire what you want on the bottom, and then you thumb that one card to the top, and then you're there. So again, this is our situation. We've got our stack with 5, diamond, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the 9th card is the 5 of diamonds. Okay, so let's do one more stack here, and you can see again how this works. Again, I'm shuffling face up, and again, any stack you want. If I wanted to call out maybe a 4 of a kind, I could do it this way. I would take my ace here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to thumb through one card at a time until I see an ace. Now I know I've gone through, when I put that back I could see the break. I know I've gone through about that many cards, so I can thumb those off immediately as I start thumbing through for more. And I go through, I grab another ace, and I notice another ace, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to on the fly, I'm going to hold a break there, and then I can thumb that one off, put the ace on the bottom, and now I've acquired 4 of a kind really very quickly. If I wasn't talking, that would have been done in a matter of seconds, and now I've got a 4 of a kind. And all I've been doing is shuffling, apparently. Now, what comes next is really, really important. So assuming we're doing the any card at any number bit, I've got 4 of a kind here, but assuming we're doing either one of those, all I want to do is, after I've done this, I want to turn my body from this point of view to this point of view and turn the cards over. So now I can do at least one honest, well, fairly honest looking shuffle. It's actually a top stock retention. I'm going to take off the top block to retain it as much as I would need. You can do as much as half the deck if you needed to for a really complex stack. I'm going to in-jog one card. I'm going to shuffle off on top of that sloppily. Then I'm going to pick up at my break, put the break in there, and then I'm going to shuffle off those non-essential cards, and then I'm going to drop my stack on top. So it's important after doing this to turn around and do one fairly honest looking shuffle before you get into it. And actually at this point, when you get past the break part, this point right here, when you start to shuffle back into the packet, this is when you want to start drawing attention to the fact that you're doing something. Say, hey, I've been working on something I want to show to you real quickly. And it works like this. We're going to just find some random pieces of information, right? And what they've done is you've put in their mind what looks like a totally honest shuffle, and you're only showing off the second half of a top stock retention. So there's no clue. They've not been clued into the fact that that's what you've been doing, that you've been holding cards into a place. From their perspective, they're seeing one honest shuffle, and then you're getting right into it. Okay, so timing is really everything when you're setting something up in front of people. The trick starts after the setup. The setup can be done right in front of them, but you have to have a plan. You have to have a design for it. You can't do this. This is not something that you can do. Someone can't say, here, show me a trick. Have them give you the deck and then do a setup. That never works. You can't do that. You can, however, maybe do something different. Okay, do some other kind of trick that doesn't require a setup, right? You could do a trick where you do a peek. You could say, why don't you tell me when to stop? Stop right there. You could say, that's your card, please memorize that. And I now know that they have the 10 of clubs. I peeked it right at the selection, and I can, not knowing what it is, I can then go on and do some kind of trick with it, right? I can get control of it however I want to, and then use it. But you could do something like that, and as they are absorbing, as your spectators are thinking about what just happened, then that's the opportune time to do a setup. So as they're thinking about that and they're pondering it, you can start into some kind of setup where you're setting a stack up, right, and you're doing some culling. So that's when you do it. You do it in the off moment, when the tension has been released and there is no expectation for something new. That's when you can start doing a setup. You can start culling things out. So Other ways to cull is just plain opportunity. So I gave you that story about my mother-in-law and that trick that I did twice for her, 2 different ways. Both of those examples, particularly the second one, used an awful lot of opportunity. I took advantage of opportunities that arose, particularly in that case, the fact that she said she saw the card when I know she couldn't have, right? I reinforced that. I took the opportunity that she gave to me to reinforce on her something that wasn't true. You just take advantage of opportunities. Make sure you're watching for them and that you see them. Now, how does this fit into card culling in preparation? Well, opportunities arise all the time, especially if you're in a card game, right? If you show a trick at a card game, this is a very old school way of culling cards. You would have cards that are sitting out for various reasons on the table, and in the gathering of cards, much like in with cheating, you can acquire some control. So for example, I can see right here I've got a couple of cards that are desirable, right? I've got a couple of 2s right there, I've got a couple of 5s, and I've got 2 cards on top. Well, all I need to do is when I go to shuffle, I just need to take off 2 cards, and then I need to do a bottom stock retention, right? So I can shuffle off, right? And then I can do an in-jog, and I can throw down, and then I pick up at my in-jog, and then I shuffle off again. And what I've done is I've retained cards that I wanted. I have 2 2s and 2 5s, and I can use that in some way. So take advantage of opportunity as it arises. If you have an opportunity where cards are face up, pick them up in the right order and start setting up for something, okay? Acquire information via opportunity. Other ways that there are to cull cards out. Now this is really when no one's paying attention. There are some very effective ways to just take cards out. You can there's a description in Erdnase about thumbing through until you see a desired card, and then rocking up and doing an in-jog, right? And then you thumb in that card, and then you can acquire that and pull it out in a strip at the very end, or you can out-jog it, or whatever the case may be. That is something that is really just a quick acquisition of cards, but it doesn't look very clean. Now, one thing you could do, I remember watching, it's a Rich Ferguson video he did a while ago, where he said, well, you can go through and you can pretend like you're finding the jokers, right? And as I'm doing that, I can just up-jog the cards that I need. And it's funny, someone put a comment in there that, says he's looking for jokers and up-jogs 8 cards, right? That doesn't work very well, to be honest with you, but you could do this. This is a little bit of a take on what he's talking about. I don't think he was thinking quite clearly when he did that example, but what you could do is you could in-jog what you want, because when you in-jog something, it's not apparent. So I'm going to, on the guise of finding jokers, I'm actually going to in-jog aces. So when I come up on an ace, I bring it in towards myself. Now, from this perspective, it's not terribly apparent that something's sticking out, especially if you're kind of sloppy about it. You got to pinch the cards a little bit tightly, too, as you do this. Now, as I come to my first joker, I can out-jog that one. Okay, so what I've got is I've got 2 aces in jog, and I've got 1 joker out jog. Now, if I come to my joker before I get to my last ace, which is not the case here, it's actually right next to it, what I would do is I would pass by, let's pretend that the joker was right here. I would pass it up so that I can get to the last card that I need. Then I would sort of square, and then I would keep going through again until I found my joker, and then I would out-jog it. Now what I can do is I can square, and I can keep my in-jogged aces kind of deep palm here, and then I can strip out my jokers, and then what I can do is I can go straight into like a table strip or something like that. So you'd want to have a table to pull this off. But I could strip out then my 4 aces while I strip fairly on top of that. And what I've done is I've acquired my 4 of a kind or whatever I was looking for, at least to the bottom. So I think that's a better take on the joker guys. This is very risky. I never do this, but it's if you wanted to do that, if you had to start the trick at this point and you needed to acquire cards, you could practice, I think, until you're proficient enough to do in-jog acquisition. So again, you're looking for jokers, but actually you're culling out queens, right? So I'm taking my queens and in-jogging as I come across them. I'm being pretty sloppy about it. I find everything I need as I'm looking for jokers. And let's see here. There's another joker, but I still haven't gotten my queen, so I have to go until I find it. Oh, it's away at the top here. Let me come back. Oh, I think I missed it. Oh, here's my joker, right? This is really risky business because they're looking at you doing something. They're watching you doing something in hand there, okay? And as they're watching you doing something, you're actually doing something. So I don't think that's a good place to be. Stacked tricks are killers. Absolute killers. If you have a stack going on, a preset trick is almost impossible to see through, especially if it certainly appears as though it could not have been set up. And that's why creating a setup right in front of people when they're unaware is very powerful, because it just takes away the assumptions that things were prepared, right? It's a lot different than taking a deck out of a, taking the card box out of your pocket and taking the deck out of the box and saying, hey, let me show you something. Well, you can show me anything at this point, right? You just brought your own cards. You just took them out of the box, and now you're going to show me a trick. Well, there's all kinds of weird stuff going on there. There's a lot of suspicion. But if I've been fiddling with the cards for a while and I'm apparently showing an honest shuffle, and then I show them a trick, that's a totally different situation, especially if the cards have been used by somebody else earlier. So, yeah, just wanted to share that with you. A little bit of a tutorial here about the concept of setting up stacks right in front of people, doing it the right way at the right time with the right methods, and starting the trick. Again, it's about defining when the trick starts. That is such an important, crucial principle in performing, that people, even if you're not doing a setup trick, I think there are a lot of routines and demonstrations that suffer a lack of attention to when the actual effect begins, right? Like, for example, if I'm having somebody select a card and sign it, right? Go ahead, pick any card you want. That one right here. Okay, why don't we have you assign that right here? Go ahead and sign the card, right? Having somebody do that procedure, the trick is not necessarily started at that point, right? You could be doing all kinds of dirty work if you're doing your operations during all this procedure of signing and everything. Then you turn it over and then you say, let me show you something amazing. What I have here is a signed card. I am now getting programmed into their mind that the trick is beginning now. Everything that came before it was just preparation. Literally. We were preparing things with you, but also I was probably doing a lot of dirty stuff too during that time. That was a very offhand, comfortable, low attention moment where we were setting up for this moment right here, which is where the trick actually begins. Now I want you to watch very closely, and of course I do, because it's all done. I'm way ahead of you and I already have it set up. So when the trick begins really, really matters, especially in the concept of preparing things in front of people. So hopefully you take something away from this little discussion. I haven't been on in a while, so I thought I would post something here and give you something to chew on and think about. So good luck with that, and happy magicking.